Hello, everyone, and welcome to the section. Welcome to the session, Making Skilling Programs and Employment Opportunities More Inclusive for Youth with Disabilities. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Really excited that you're all here with us. And please feel free to also note in the chat who you are and where you're coming from would be great. So my name is Urmila Sarkar, and I am Deputy Director of Programs with the Generation Unlimited, and really honored to be part of this timely and important discussion. It's organized by YouthForesight, UNICEF, ILO, GenU, and with the participation of Special Olympics. And I wanted to really take an opportunity to thank all of the partners that led to this great session and discussion we're going to have today, and a huge thanks to GenU's Global Young People's Action Team, and specifically Munira, Aman, Sophia Halal, Dimitria Nintili, and Sandy Wong, who generously volunteered their time and effort to design the report for today's session. Their dedication has been instrumental in bringing all of this work to life. So before starting, I'd like to inform you that for this session, we've incorporated accessibility features, international sign and cart. We'd also like to ask our speakers not to rush. And if you are using PowerPoint, please describe your slides. And if anyone in our audience would like to ask a question, you can share them in the chat now or connect with our speakers on the YouthForesight Community Forum tomorrow. I'm excited to dive into this webinar to learn more about the key barriers that young people are facing with disabilities when accessing skilling programs, job opportunities, and what are the approaches that can help governments, practitioners, and young people around the world themselves to advocate and ensure equal opportunities for all. Let's start with some of the data. So it's estimated that 16% of the world's population, approximately that's 1.3 billion people, live with some form of disability. And while the data for youth with disabilities remains scarce, estimates suggest that something around 180 to 220 million young people aged 10 to 24 live with disability, and 80% of those live in the developing world. Now, while this group represents more than 10%, a significant share of the youth globally, they're less likely than their peers to find paid work, to become financially self-sufficient, or have the opportunity to access a full role in adult life and society. According to the ILO, youth with disabilities have double the rate of young people not in education, training, or employment, and up to 50% in some regions. So some of the barriers and opportunities to inclusion for youth and disabilities include their stigma and discrimination or attitudinal barriers. Due to assumptions, children with disabilities are considered to be in need of fixing, or to be less able to contribute or to participate, or to be less worthy of attention. In fact, UNICEF reports that 41% of children with disabilities are discriminated comparing to those with abilities. And compared to children without disabilities, 49% of children with disabilities never attend schools. It makes it challenging for them to access secondary education and transition to work. And the barriers here are lack of accessible learning spaces, training of teachers, access to assistive technologies, and lack of safe environments, as well as inclusive laws. And for myself personally, I've seen this work working with UNICEF in South Asia in the field, and have seen this kind of discrimination play out in action. And there's so much work that we must do to ensure inclusion for all children, for all young people with disabilities. And this whole area of learning to earning is something that we have not discussed enough and really tried to do enough as a global community. The GenU guidelines on engaging young people with disabilities and learning to earning initiatives emphasizes practical strategies for inclusion. For example, the Imagine Ventures program, a youth-led social entrepreneurship program in 60 countries worldwide, along with Upshift, and we'll hear from one of the speakers later today, has demonstrated success in engaging young people with disabilities in Sierra Leone. A team, for example, a team from the St. Joseph School from the hearing impaired developed a sign language app during an Imagine Ventures boot camp session. And this app aimed to enhance communication between students, between teachers and parents, while raising awareness of sign language. And facilitators and interpreters provided crucial support, ensuring the equal participation of all the members. And so this illustrates how inclusive approaches can lead to innovative and impactful solutions. And even more importantly, these solutions are led by young people themselves. And we'll hear more about this from our esteemed speakers. In terms of learning to earning or school to work programs, the World Bank reports that 75% of jobs for young people in developing countries are in the informal sector. So that underscores the need for vocational, entrepreneurial training, and excluding people with disabilities can cost a country something like 3 to 7% of GDP. So we'll learn today, for example, with Upshift, how UNICEF does this in practice. Peer support and self-efficacy is crucial when we talk about youth empowerment. And we know that these initiatives are rarely accessible for young people with disabilities. The Special Olympics will share about their inclusive approach. I'm really excited to hear that as well, to the empowerment of young people. And youth with disabilities, as I mentioned before, face multiple forms of marginalization due to gender, race, whether they live in rural areas, which compound the barriers they encounter. Girls and young women with disabilities face even greater economic inclusion challenges. So we really have to apply an intersectionality or a convergence in our approach to reach every young person that responds to their individual needs. I also wanted to highlight, and we'll talk about this in the session, policy advocacy and disability inclusion. Policies on youth, education, skilling, and employment, they really don't always take into consideration the specific needs of youth with disabilities, or keeping markets accountable for providing equal opportunities for all young people, incentivizing the private sector to do this. The ILO will share more recommendations in this regard. And it's really, as someone myself who's been working in this space for about almost 25 years, it's an area that we really, really need to advance more. So with that welcome, and with just kind of trying to outline the kind of key points and the key kind of points that the speakers will make in the panel and discussion, we're going to start with a spotlight case study, the inclusive UNICEF Upshift. So I introduce our speaker, Hervé Morin, the UNICEF Office of Innovations, to talk about the project and how to make this skilling program to be inclusive, how he's worked to do that. Before we get into that, I'm going to look at a short film about the Upshift program in Bhutan, and then I will move over to Hervé. Please go ahead. Is there sound in the video? So I think they're working out the sound.
Perhaps we can move on to Hervé's short presentation first, and then we'll take a look at the video just after.
Okay, let's do that. So Hervé, over to you.
Thank you, Uma. Could you please put the slide deck up? Thank you. So Upshift is a global skills building program that works on developing 21st century skills and entrepreneurial skills for young people. And next slide, please. And we have a quite large footprint, being in over 50 countries right now. So inclusive approach is something that's very important to us in implementation, but also an area where we have ambitions to improve delivery for young people with disabilities, among others. Next slide, please. So here, basically, I'll be presenting just a very high level lessons learned, 5 key lessons learned that we've identified in adapting upshift delivery for young people living with disabilities over the past 10 years. Next slide. So when I speak to colleagues that are running the programs in the field, and we talk about making the approach more inclusive and reaching out to different cohorts, one of the most common feedback that I get is that they don't have the resources, they don't have the time, and this is something that we have learned, but it's something that's often difficult to communicate. Is that adapting a face-to-face delivery bootcamp, which is the upshift format that we're talking about here, is not a heavy lift. This is something that can be done very fast. It's something that can be done with little to no cost. And mostly adapting these type of activities for young people living with disabilities, it's a design and a process issue. And I think we'll speak about that a bit later, Omida, when you present the guidance notes that you guys have developed. But here, the key lesson here is that it's not complicated, and if you integrate it in the original design of the project rollout, it's something that can be done with very little to no budget impact and with no additional times. You do not need to hire a specific consultant or to have a great level of expertise. Next slide, please. And one of the reasons that this can be done very easily and very fast is that the experts are in the room. Or maybe the slide should have been titled, "The experts should be in the room." And by this, we mean that when you're adapting to a specific cohort, you need to engage them and asking them what they need in order to access the program. And young people here, when we talk about the experts, we talk about the young people themselves. We're talking about their caretakers, whether it's translators, whether it's a teacher, an institute, or even their parents. They generally know what works for them, and they are able to articulate this very fast. And working with them in a co-creation process is not something that is very complex, or is not something that's very complicated. It basically means simply that you ask them what they need to access the particular format that you're providing. And this, again, is something that really allows you to leapfrog here. And the engagement of the young people and caretakers allows you, not only to ensure that you will have increased adoption because it's really designed by young people for young people, but it also diminishes all the risk that you have of designing something for a specific cohort. And in a lot of cases, what we have found is that it also is a very strong advocacy tool, because you might see some obstacles that are coming from an unexpected part of the stakeholders is the parents. We've seen in a lot of cases that parents were hesitant to let their children attend upshift because some of them thought that the children may not be able to have the level to do it. Some thought that that they might be bullied or made fun of. So this engagement process really allows you, to talk to the community and engage them. So actually, your commitment to it and how you're going to be working with young people. Next slide, please. So up until now, I've been talking about the how do you adapt the delivery models, and this is something that generally is very easy to be done, as I said. But what do we do when we want to go to a more detailed adaptation of a learning journey, particularly when we work on skills building or entrepreneurship approaches? Something that young people with disabilities might have different desires. They might have different preferences from the rest of the group. And what we have found across many countries is that young people with disabilities generally feel that there might not be enough possibilities for them to enter the labor market. And even if they do have that possibility, that it might not be the best environment for them. So In general, when we talk to them, they are less interested in the skills building approach, but they're far more interesting in the entrepreneurial approach. They're far more interested in having the opportunities, to not only develop the skill sets, but actually, to receive the mentoring and the seed funding to put entrepreneurial ideas into action, because that allows them to create a better environment from themselves where they have more control over who they work with or the communities that they serve. So they feel that they can be better integrated and better at developing these approaches. And I think that this is a very important part when you're looking at these adaptation, is that the different groups can have different approaches. Young people with disabilities are like any other group. You need to engage them to know what they want. Next slide, please. And here, I was going to link actually to the guidelines that GenU is going to present. You need to start somewhere, and that's there's different ways, and there's some inclusion of certain disabilities can be done incredibly simply. And as I said, it's not something that you need a lot of expertise. You need to engage the communities. And if you are looking for some guidance, there's a lot of toolkits out there. But I would recommend really the one that GenU is putting out right now. It's done by a team that has a lot of expertise in the field, and it's very well articulated, very clear examples, easy to follow into and to put into practice. And I'm sure that once you have a look at these type of guidelines, you can see that actually the bar is not very high to start delivering meaningful programs to young people with disabilities. And then after that, there's always the option to iterate, to expand it to other cohorts, to further adapt it. But basically, you need to start somewhere. And there are low-hanging fruits here that have no cost, no budget implications. It's really up to you, as program managers, or to get that up and running. Next slide, please. And last but not least is that making Upshift inclusive benefits everyone. And when I say everyone here, is that when we're talking about, of course, it benefits the young people that participate, being able or disabled, but it also, when we look at the inclusivity angle, it's an incredible tool to get the advocacy messages and combat stigma. When we run an Upshift boot camp, there are plenty of interactions between the teams, and they get to know each other. And it's a process that can be really intense, because we ask them to come to us with problems that they care about, something that's impacting them, their loved one, their communities. And good mentors know that at the very beginning, there's a lot of self-doubt. Everybody's in panic mode because they're not sure that their idea is good. They're not sure that they could win, or even if they formulated the idea properly. And they look on the left, they look on the right, and they see everybody that's wearing the same Upshift t-shirt. They realize that everybody is kind of in the same boat, and this kind of carries people forward. And when you have young people with disabilities, they're not perceived as others as having disabilities. They're just perceived as one other Upshifter that is part of the group. And here I'd share like one anecdote. In one adaptation, when I was working in Ukraine, we included young people with mobility issues. And we had some of the groups that we were doing a focus discussion afterwards. And there was an able-bodied kid that was sitting next to another one on a wheelchair. And they had kind of become close because they had similar interests. And when we were asking one of them, what did he think about working with young people with disabilities, his response was to say that, well, actually, he doesn't really know anybody with disabilities. And his friend right next to him was saying, hey, but I have a disability. And the response was immediate, was saying, no, but I mean people that are really disabled. And the answer was again, hey, I am really disabled. But this is really kind of the gold standard that you can achieve, that people don't look at each other through their disability. They look through the common experience that they had together. And what we have seen in follow-up monitoring across many countries is that bound between the different group is something that stays over time. And the young people that have participated in there, they become advocates for young people with disabilities. And this is something that really can have an impact at the community level or at the school level when you work with those cohorts. And I think I will stop here. I'm getting close to my time limit. I know that there's a video, but thank you very much for your time. Over.
Thanks so much, Hervé, for that really great and insightful presentation. Again, Hervé's our Upshift Global Lead with the UNICEF Office of Innovation and been doing lots of really excellent collaboration work that he already mentioned with Gen U in his presentation. Now, it would be great if we could try to get the video up and hopefully the sound will be working this time. So could we do that from Bhutan? So Gladys or Julie, I'm going to have to come in. Is the video working?
Well, there is subtitles at least.
Can you see my screen? Sorry.
I can see the screen, Gladys, but there's no sound, but there's subtitles.
Ah, okay. Can you share from your side, Julia?
I will
So
give it
bear
a go.
with us. Julia, let's try once. And even if there's subtitles, as Hervé pointed out, we'll just read them then. If that sounds good. And then we'll move on to the next. And I also, as Ronald has helpfully pointed into the chat, you need to select sound. So maybe that will help.
We have changed mindsets.
Made a lot of friends, both listening to just Julia. One of the greatest program that I've attended so far. We learn different skills. In future, it is easier for us to lead an independent life. Equipping adolescents and young people with life skills they need for the world of work. 64 schools, 10 youth centers across Bhutan are empowering young people to become change makers through the Upshift program, an initiative that equips young people with the skills to identify challenges in their communities and create entrepreneurial solutions to address them. In the highlands of Laya, students are learning to weave the iconic bamboo hats that girls and women wear as part of their traditional dress. While in the Western District of Wangdi, students have found innovative solutions to reduce the weight of their textbooks.
We don't have to carry the whole book when we are assigned some words. We just need to take out some papers. They were identifying what are the different problems and what could be the solutions. And so, some of these were very, very practical, which we may not have observed.
To solve the problems of dust in classrooms, students used recycled materials to build a dust collector and a water alarm to save water. From motion sensors for school toilets to building a ventilated store for vegetables, recycling water from hand washing stations, and creating an employment hub for deaf people. The Upshift program is enabling young people to find innovative solutions to problems in their communities.
Thanks so much. I mean, it's always great to help bring what Hervé was speaking about to life with the video. And I've had the pleasure of working in Bhutan when I used to cover South Asia. So it was fantastic to see the images. And I know there's tremendous work being done in the country for young people with disabilities. So with that, I move on to our panel discussion. So we're very glad for the panel discussion to be joined by representatives from the ILO, and Special Olympics. And with us, we have Abdel Rahman Al Moafi from the Special Olympics Egypt, athlete and Global Youth Leadership Council member. We have Clement Colston, the Senior Manager of Youth Development at Special Olympics International, and looking very happy today, I must say. And then we have Gular Koja, Disability Inclusion and Gender Equality Expert for the ILO. So that's our panel with us today. So my first question, I'm going to go to Abdel Rahman. You are also a leader of the Global Youth Leadership Council. You've spoken at many events, including the Egypt Athlete Forum this year. So could you please tell us, what does it take to become a leader, and who has supported you on your journey. Over to you.
Hello, my name is Abdurrahman Al-Muafi, and I am a Special Olympics athlete from Egypt. I play athletics, pucci, and cycling, and have won numerous medals and awards. I am also a member of the Special Olympics Global Youth Leadership Council. As council members, we empower youth with and without intellectual disabilities across the globe, and play a key role in Special Olympics youth programming at the global, regional, national, and local levels. Right now, I am serving in my role as a council member in Abu Dhabi, where my fellow council members and I are supporting the Special Olympics Global Center's inclusion for tomorrow summit. Leaders and advocates from 30+ countries are here to share insights on promoting social inclusion for people with intellectual disabilities. I really like this question about what it takes to be a leader, because I believe everyone can be a leader, and being part of the council has shown me this. Young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are the leaders of today and tomorrow. We are creative, we are resourceful, and we are resilient. Through Special Olympics, I have delivered important skills and put them to use in meaningful leadership roles. One of these roles was serving as the MCs of the 2024 Special Olympics Global Youth, the Special Olympics Global Virtual Youth and Educator Summit. This event brought together hundreds of young people and educators from around the world to learn how to work and lead together. In the Special Olympics Middle East North Africa region, I was the former leader of the Egyptian Athletics Leadership Council. I also participated in many regional events such as the Regional Youth Leadership Summit, and was the MCs in our Regional Excellence in Action event to expand UCS across MENA region.
That is fantastic, Alhamdran. Can you share who has supported you along the way?
My sister Shad, who is not only my unified partner, but also my fellow Global Youth Leadership Council member, has supported me throughout my leadership roles. We make a strong team. Our current project is planning the 2025 Global Youth Leadership Summit in Torino, Italy, which is part of the Special Olympics World Winter Games. Because of Special Olympics, I believe in myself and the value of other youth, regardless of disability or levels. Because of Special Olympics, I have opportunities to share my voice and message of inclusion with peers, educators, and leaders like yourselves across the globe. Because of Special Olympics, I have gained more confidence in myself and my abilities, and made many friends from around the world, which is a wonderful thing. You all about working with inclusive youth around the world. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Abdelrahman. And just to say that I really appreciate all the work that you've been doing to promote inclusion, and that any young person, regardless of disability level, can do whatever they want in the world. I think you must be an inspiration to your family, to Egypt,
yes,
and around the world. So thanks so much for that. Over to Clement now. It would be great, Clement, if you could please tell us how Special Olympics empowers young persons with disabilities and provides those kinds of skills that are helping young people to transition to a job or to start their business.
Absolutely. I want to say thank you so much for having us today, as well as hello, everyone. My name is Clement Colston, and I'm the Senior Manager of Youth Development here at Special Olympics International. I've been involved with Special Olympics with more than 12 years in various capacities, from a unified partner, a coach, a youth leader, intern, consultant, and now as a full-time staff member. I'm honored to be here today and speak with you on this important webinar. At Special Olympics, we empower people with intellectual disabilities by providing them with opportunities to develop leadership skills, gain confidence, and showcase their abilities through sports and community engagement. One of the key ways we do this is through Unified Sports, a program that brings together people with and without intellectual disabilities together on the same team. The goal of Unified Sports is simple: promote social inclusion and understanding through shared experiences. By training and playing together, we create a pathway to friendship and greater understanding. In addition to Unified Sports, Special Olympics offers a range of youth empowerment and athlete leadership programs. These initiatives provide participants the opportunity to take on leadership roles like public speaking, coaching, event management, and helping them to build essential life skills that are critical for entering the workforce. Our athlete leadership programs offer real-world experiences in time management, public speaking, and leadership, all of which equip young people for successful careers. Through health screening and job readiness training, we work to break down barriers to employment, sensitize the private sector to the talents of people with intellectual disabilities, and foster an inclusive workspace. By supporting athletes in developing both their athletic and life skills, Special Olympics ensures that young people can transition from learning to earning and empowering them to live in meaningful, sustainable employment. I am also excited to speak about the important collaboration between Special Olympics and UNICEF, two organizations that have worked together since 2011. Our partnership spans many areas, from inclusive sports and health screenings to youth empowerment programs, early childhood development, and family support. Through this collaboration, we are making a real difference in the lives of young people worldwide and building a more inclusive world. We strive to ensure that athletes and youth alike have the chance to bring their voices and visions to global development. Through programs like Athlete Leadership and Youth Development, we are ensuring that young people, regardless of ability, have the chance to lead, to innovate, and contribute meaningfully to society. Special Olympics athletes around the world are passionate about engaging young people in schools, community centers, and sports clubs. They want to show the world that what true inclusion looks like at the grassroots level. Our Unified Leadership Program is pivotal in raising awareness and breaking down barriers to employment, showcasing the potential of all people with intellectual disabilities in the private sector, and creating opportunities for all. Together with UNICEF, Special Olympics is driving meaningful change, empowering youth, and shaping a future where everyone, regardless of ability, has the chance to thrive. On behalf of Special Olympics, I want to extend our deepest thanks to UNICEF Executive Director Kathy Russell, UNICEF Disability Division Leader Gopal Mitra, Deputy Director Fernando Botello, as well as Anna, the program specialist for UNICEF. Thank you for believing in the power of youth and for being with us today. I know Abdurrahman and myself really enjoyed preparing for today's presentation and look forward to staying in touch. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Clement, and really congratulations for all the amazing work that you're doing, you, Abdelrahman, with the Special Olympics. It's really fantastic and inspirational. I also know about the work through Anna, Gopal, and others at UNICEF. So really, thanks so much for sharing that with us, and keep it up. Thanks so much. So now I move over. We're joined today, as I mentioned before, with Gular from the ILO, and the International Labour Organization is also doing lots of really amazing work in this field. And she has come to share with us about that work as the disability and inclusion and gender equality expert for the ILO. So thanks so much for being here. And for any of this kind of work, it really requires a broad coalition of key actors. So the question I have for you is, what are the key barriers and recommendations in implementation of policies on equal employment for youth with disabilities? If you could let us know about that. And what measures employees have taken to ensure they reach, recruit, and allow to grow young people with disabilities at an equal basis with others. So over to you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. And to start a bit with a broader picture, we must remember that according to the ILO's statistic, there are 7 on 10 persons without disabilities who are in the world of work. And there are only 4 persons with disabilities on 10 who are in the world of work, which also means that there are only 3 on 10 persons with disabilities who are in the world of work. So 7 are not and 3 are. And when I say being in the world of work, we also count persons who are unemployed. So in this 3 on 10 persons with disabilities who are in the world of work, we also count those who are currently unemployed. And recently, the ILO published a study on the employment and wage outcomes of persons with disabilities, which shows that persons with disabilities are less likely to participate in the world of work, in the labor market. And even when they do, they face higher unemployment rates and they are more likely to be self-employed. And they also tend to earn lower wage. And my colleagues who worked on this report are on the line, and we will be sharing this. Thank you, Sevan, and we also share again in the follow-up email if that's helpful. But what is important to remember is that those disparities are not explained by individual characteristics. So there are no correlation between persons with disabilities, their education background, and the fact that they're not represented in the world of work. So it's not because they are not skilled or other reasons. It's really because of other reasons. And if we go now to youth with disabilities, again, according to the ILO data, and as said at the beginning of this webinar, they have doubled the rate of NEET. So NEET means neither in employment, education, or training, NEET, compared to youth without disabilities. And this, in some regions, is up to 50%. And also, youth with disabilities are up to 5 times more likely to be neither in employment, education, or training compared to youth without disabilities. And again, this rate can be higher among young women with disabilities. So why I started to say some words about the broad picture now with youth. There are many barriers faced that by persons with disabilities, youth or not youth, in the world of work. And youth without disabilities also face many barriers, which means that youth with disabilities face all the barriers faced by persons with disabilities, but also faced by any other youth with or without disabilities in the world of work. But having said that, it's not 1 + 1. We cannot say that youth with disabilities face the barriers of youth plus the barriers of persons with disabilities. They also face intersecting barriers due to the shared identity of age and having a disability, and of course other characteristics which can be age, race, ethnicity, nationality, and others, or refugee status, etc. So what are some barriers that youth with disabilities are facing to access the world of work? Of course, they face many stigmas and prejudices and negative thoughts about disability. And we all might have heard that certain types of disabilities are more suitable for certain jobs. For example, I often hear, and we often see in our work in some countries where, it's believed that, for example, persons who are blind can be better at giving massage, or I also heard that persons who are deaf or hard of hearing are better at working in noisy places because they cannot hear, or persons in wheelchairs can work, where you have to stay seated or at a standard, answering the phone, and these kind of things, which creates a lot of barriers in the lives of persons with disabilities who act, and youth with disabilities who have dreams and hopes and projects which are not the ones that are imposed by the society. And of course, it's also often we also often see that unfortunately, in the world of work, disability equals inability to work. And this also affects the lives of youth with disabilities, and we need to systematically include disability inclusion in any non-discrimination policies. We often see non-discrimination policies in the world of work or in related topics that deal with non-discrimination, but without having a disability lens. And I think, that's an issue, because being treated differently on the basis of a disability is also a discrimination and should be put on an equal footing with with any non-discrimination policies. We also know that youth with disabilities, when they're younger, they are sometimes and often sent to segregated schooling, which is separated them from education with others. And it's not always equipping youth with disabilities with the right skills that they need to actually enter the labor market. And we also know, and it was said at the beginning of this webinar, that they also not have many opportunities to access the mainstream education systems. This also and often depends on the availability of a family member to support them, to compensate with the lack of accessibility of inclusion of the education system. But it's not offered to everybody to have the possibility of benefiting from the support of a family member. This really depends on many conditions and the income level of the family. Not everybody is able to have a family member who is entirely available for the young person with disabilities to support them, even if they would like, because they might have other opportunities to go for income generating activities. We of course need to make vocational trainings accessible and inclusive for persons with disabilities. We saw with the pandemic and at the beginning, 1 out of 6 youth were out of the labor market, and persons with disabilities were among the first ones to lose their jobs due to socio-economic consequences of the pandemic. And this was even more prevalent for women with disabilities. So here again, the intersectional identities of youth with disabilities need to be considered in all policies. And the ILO produced a policy brief on making digital skills initiatives accessible and inclusive for youth with disabilities. We are all aware that now the global economy is getting more and more digital, and the pandemic has been accelerating this indeed. From data visualization, the cybersecurity, big data analysis, blockchains, and many other aspects. Enterprises and employers need and look for talents who have the digital skills to work in these sectors. So we should create an inclusive learning environment for youth with disabilities as well. But most in-demand skills are not inclusive for youth with disabilities. And so we need also to train the training of trainers in TVET centers, including how to make the centers accessible, how to provide for reasonable accommodation, and also in all policies regarding disability, because there are policies that deal specifically with disability inclusion. We need to address specifically the needs of youth with disabilities, because they are not always the same as, or there are additional ones compared to other persons with disabilities. We should, of course, also include youth with disabilities in all mainstream youth policies. This is critical to ensure decent job for youth, and indeed the ILO Decent Job for Youth program is a global initiative to coordinate efforts and investment efforts and policy efforts to help youth to access decent work opportunities. It also includes many components on youth with disabilities. So it's a good example of how to mainstream youth with disabilities. Despite policies on decent work programs, we know that there is a proeminence of the informal economy in many countries. The ILO data shows that in 3/4 of countries where we have available data, persons with disabilities are more likely than others to be in the informal economy. And sometimes for those of us on the line who operate in informal contexts, we really need to remember that persons with disabilities are more likely to belong to this informal sector. We see that providing entrepreneurship opportunities to youth with disabilities can be a solution. It can help them to generate, to be self-employed and to not depend on the willingness of employers to include them. But this should not replace, again, the real access to the labor market. And so even in all programs related to the transition into from the informal to the formal economy, we really need to include the voices and opinions and needs of youth with disabilities as well. Thank you very much. I will stop here and happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Aguilar. So obviously, like a rich information that you've shared with us, both on the key barriers and recommendations, but also what employers can do about the issue, and so many linked issues of really access and education, equality of access in education, equality of access in TVET, in entrepreneurship development, and many other points that you made, which I think are super important. And a lot of the work that the ILO and the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth have been doing, similarly, as we heard from Special Olympics, UNICEF, it's really important to bring this broad coalition of actors so we can really do something to move the needle on learning to earning for young people with disabilities. And at the end of the day, we know it would contribute overall to economic development in the countries. So anyway, that very, very interesting session and reflections there from the panel. So I have a few questions that have come through the chat, and we have a very active chat on the side that you see. And I wanted to ask the first question to Goulart from Ronald is there a correlation with the data on the ability of persons with disabilities to access work and countries with or without equal opportunity laws? If you can please answer that question.
Yeah, there's not really real linkages between having laws and policies. It's always helps, and it's more an instrument for youth with disabilities to advocate for their rights. But usually there is, I wouldn't say that there is a big difference, because the stigmas and prejudices are always there. And also that's why we also try within the ILO to work with the public and private sector to help accompany companies to make their work and their workplaces more inclusive for persons with disabilities, because there is also, in addition to having laws and policies, and those are critical, but a need to exchange good practices to make recruitment platforms accessible and inclusive. I was even talking this morning with one of my good friends with disabilities, who he's youth with disabilities, like me as well. And he, when he finished his studies, he sent 823 candidacies to companies. He's highly skilled, and he has studied and has several years at university and masters. So on 823 candidacies sent, he received only 3 offers for an interview. And this is in a country where there are quite good laws and policies on inclusion of persons with disabilities in the world of work, but yet there are many barriers that are faced. And for this, we look more at the quantitative data and the lived experiences of persons with disabilities. Barriers might be a bit different, and ways to address them might be a bit different. There are still many challenges.
Thanks so much for that. And I guess the key point is that while it's good to have policies, policies are not enough. It can provide the enabling environment, but organizations, we have to work together with young people to implement them in practice. So it's a very good point there. So the next question I have is for Hervé. from Youth3 in Indonesia. So when we are working with people with disabilities, do you think that we should be certifying working with disabilities, or at least we have plenty of, have the certification, or at least we have plenty of experiences of, like, what's been your experience like working with them and looking at, the certification of skills and so forth? If I understood the question properly in the chat. Please go ahead, Hervé.
So I understand the question to be that should the trainings attended by young people with disability be certified? Is that correct?
I believe that's the question, at least, but in the chat it was a little bit articulated differently, but I believe that's the question.
Well, I think that any program that's like accredited should be accredited for everybody that participates. And I certainly think here in Gulor made a strong case for it, is that we need to provide more opportunities for young people with disabilities to receive that type of accreditation or the participation in those types of programs. So the short answer would be a resounding yes. Let's make that happen. Let's provide more opportunities, and let's make sure that these are concrete ways in which they could enter the labor market.
Sure, Hervé. And I think underlying that is the idea that whatever training, whatever skills are provided for young people with disabilities, that they have equal recognition. And we do that for any kind of skills development, and just in the space of young people and skills development. It's not necessarily that all these programs are certified, but especially in the case of when there's special programs for young people with disabilities, that they should be at the same weight as any kind of program for a young person with skill development. So I think it's a really important point. And yeah, like the short answer, Hervé, as you were saying, and I think what the person from Indonesia had put in the chat is there's a lot of experiences we can draw from there, but I'm sure many countries around the world. But thanks so much for that. And then the last question over to Abdelrahman, and then Clément, if you want to supplement. If you could change one thing to support young people who have disabilities, what would you change, Abdelrahman?
Thank you so much for asking that wonderful question. So Abdelrahman, would you want to start first, or do you want me to start first?
Start first.
Okay. So what do you think one thing that if we could inform others about youth with disabilities, what would that be?
We are going all the same.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Abdelrahman is so gifted in making sure that he helps others find their gifts, as well as he is sharing his gifts with others too. And that is such an important skill to remember. Absolutely.
Yes, we're going to the council member is awesome.
Yep, absolutely. And he is one of our great council members. All of our council members are fantastic, but really appreciate all the unique skills and gifts that each member shares with the group.
We have, yes, we are this. I need the skills and the members.
Absolutely. And I'll keep mine short since I know we're running at the end of the hour. But for me, I would say believe and create high expectations. Too often, expectations are set low. They're sometimes set not even by people with disabilities, but others in perceived value, perceived ability, and really, keep the bar raised. Let's keep higher, aim higher, and work together to make this world a more inclusive, equitable place for all of us to be able to thrive. So thank you so much.
Very well said. Thanks
so much.
Thanks so much, Abdelrahman, Clément. Very well said. Keep the expectations high, the bar high, because there's so much that any young person can do, basically. So that very well said. Just to say that we've had lots of interesting questions. There's more in the chat from the audience, and I can see there that we haven't had time to respond because we're reaching the end of the hour, unfortunately. But so tomorrow, our experts will be connected to the YouthForesight Community Forum. So we'll all be connected to the forum and answer some questions and also share more. I saw a number of requests for guidelines, for more resources. and you'll receive an email with a link to join our online chat forum after the webinar, so we can carry on the discussion virtually. So just by way of, if I could just take a few minutes to wrap up, today we've heard from some really brilliant speakers with lots of experience in the space from around the world, from our young people to, it's been amazing, sharing how it's possible to achieve inclusion by changing the way we work, by changing our perceptions, by being mindful and engaging young people with disabilities in every step of the way. And it makes sense. It makes social sense, it makes economic sense, and it's really, really important to also get employers on board too, and make sure policies are implemented in practice. I think some of the key points that came out, and we've seen some inspirational examples, we've heard about them. We saw Bhutan, we saw the amazing work of Abdel Rahman and Special Olympics, and Clement, young people leading the way, and Hervé and Goulart had many, many interesting reflections. We know that engaging young people with disabilities strengthens solidarity for more inclusive solutions and sustainable development within society, which is a mission of all of our organizations represented on the webinar today. And at the end of the day, young people like Abdel Rahman, like many others, are innovators. They come up with creative solutions every day to overcome stigma, the lack of accessible digital tools, the physical environment, and they're confronting laws and policies that were developed without consideration for their rights. And they're there to voice them, to change them, and implement the kinds of policies that ensure equality of choice and equality of opportunity. So our call to action is simple. We're asking governments, we're asking private sector, we're asking employers, UN agencies, civil society organizations, and everyone who works with young people to make every initiative inclusive of young people with disabilities and promote equal opportunities for employment and for entrepreneurship. So before we close, we'd love to hear your thoughts in the webinar. So we're launching a quick poll. Please respond now. You still have like a minute. And for anyone who would like to share their feedback in a different format, we'd welcome you to share feedback via email. So again, I thank all the speakers, organizers, the CART specialists, and the International Site for supporting this session. And with that, I call to a close. So again, have a great rest of day wherever you are around the world. And thanks so much for joining us. And please join us in ensuring an inclusive world for all, and especially young people with disabilities. Thank you.